Hello, everyone. I'm the sleep storyteller, and I am here to help you. Today, I know you're using this video to fall asleep. So, take a deep breath and let the worries of the day fade away. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It truly helps. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now get cozy. Close your eyes and let's begin your journey to deep relaxation before time took its first breath, before the stars dared to glimmer in the abyss. There was only darkness, an endless, silent expanse where even the concept of existence had yet to awaken. No sky, no earth, no whisper of life, only an immeasurable ocean stretching infinitely in all directions. This was the beginning, the moment before all moments, where the universe lay as an unshaped dream, waiting to stir. From this eternal void, a presence emerged new, the boundless sea of chaos, neither light nor shadow, neither warmth nor cold, existing beyond definition. Within him, creation lay dormant, swirling beneath his endless depths, an unspoken promise yet to unfold. But within new stillness, something stirred, a will pressing against the silence, an unseen force whispering of destiny. Then, from the heart of this formless expanse, the first land rose, a sacred mound pushing through the waters, marking the first step toward order. It was the Benben, the foundation upon which all things would be built, the beacon signaling the dawn of existence. And upon this mound appeared the first god Autumn. He was not born, nor was he crafted. He willed himself into being, his essence shimmering with the radiance of a sun yet to rise. His gaze stretched across the vast, unshaped world, knowing that the stillness could not remain. Creation had begun, but it was incomplete, and he would shape the cosmos with his own being. Drawing from within, Autumn exhaled the first breath of life, and from his essence came Shu, the god of air, who brought space and the first winds stirring through the heavens. Shu rose tall, his presence an invisible force holding the sky apart from the land, his touch gentle yet commanding. But air alone was not enough, and so Autumn reached again into himself, drawing forth moisture, and from it, Tefnut was born. She shimmered with the coolness of the first dew, her presence vital, her essence the nurturing balance to Shu's airy dominion. Together, these two ventured into the unknown, weaving the first threads of reality. They shaped the boundaries of existence, carving space from the vast abyss, moving ever outward through eternity. But in the boundless expanse, they wandered too far, lost beyond the reach of their father. Autumn, sensing their absence, felt a sorrow so profound that it stirred his very being. From his divine form, he cast forth his eye, a fragment of his own essence, imbued with luminous power, a celestial force that scoured the darkness in search of his lost children. Through the void, it traveled, blazing like a beacon, until it found Shu and Tefnut and guided them home. In his relief, Autumn wept, and from his tears, the first humans sprang forth, fragile yet filled with divine breath, destined to walk the world that had only just begun to take shape. But the cosmos was still unfinished. From the union of Shu and Tefnut came two more deities, Jeb, the god of the earth, and Nut, the goddess of the sky. Jeb was strong and steady, his body the vast land upon which life would flourish. Nut was luminous and infinite, arching over the world, a celestial expanse adorned with the promise of stars. They were inseparable, their love so great that the sky and the earth clung together as one. But Autumn, seeing that the order of the cosmos required balance, commanded Shu to separate them. With great effort, Shu lifted Nut away from Jeb, stretching the heavens high above the land. No longer could they touch, no longer could they embrace, yet their love remained seen in the horizon, where earth meets sky, in the setting sun, in the longing whispers of the wind. Within Nut's celestial form, new life stirred children destined to shape the fate of gods and mortals alike. Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys, their names woven into the tapestry of existence before they had even drawn breath. They would walk the world that was still forming, a world of promise and peril, where the balance of order and chaos would forever shift like the sands of time. The first threads of destiny had been woven, the gods had risen, and the universe had taken its first trembling steps. But this was only the beginning, and the forces that would shape the fate of all things had only just begun to stir. The heavens stretched high above, shimmering with Nut's celestial beauty, a vast tapestry of midnight woven with silver stars. Below, Jeb cradled the valleys, rivers, and mountains within his broad form, his surface rich with the promise of life. The world had taken shape, yet it was incomplete, waiting for the children of Nut to step into their destined roles. And so, beneath the watchful gaze of the gods, her womb bore forth 4 divine beings, each one destined to shape the course of existence. Osiris was the first to emerge, regal and wise, his presence intertwined with the pulse of the earth. His skin bore the deep, fertile hue of rich soil, reflecting the cycles of renewal, of death and rebirth. He carried within him the knowledge of the seasons, of the harvest, of the delicate balance between life and the beyond. He was a god of kings, a ruler not only of the living, but of the unseen realm beyond the veil of mortality. Beside him came Isis, luminous as the moon that would one day grace the night sky. She was beauty and wisdom, magic and motherhood entwined. Her presence soothed like the gentle touch of the Nile, yet her power ran as deep as its currents. She was the weaver of spells, the keeper of sacred words, the goddess whose love would one day defy even death itself. Then came Set, the storm that follows the calm, the wildfire that reshapes the land. His skin burned red like the desert sands, his gaze sharp as the blade of a warrior. He was strength and chaos, destruction and necessary change, the untamed force that tested the order his brother represented. Where Osiris embodied stability, Set was the storm that threatened it, a deity whose destiny would one day challenge the foundation of the cosmos itself. Last emerged Nephthys, a whisper in the shadows, a goddess who walked between light and darkness. She was mystery woven in the night's embrace, her presence felt in the quiet spaces where spirits lingered. Though sister to Isis, her path would be different, more elusive, more secretive, yet no less vital in the great design of existence. As the children of Nut grew into their divine roles, Autumn, their great forebear, looked upon them and saw that the world was ready. The gods were no longer solitary forces shaping the universe. They were a family, a dynasty of divine beings whose actions would ripple through eternity. Osiris, as the eldest, was given dominion over the mortal realm, a land still young and unshaped. Under his rule, civilization would rise, the rivers would be tamed, the people would learn to sow and reap, to build, to worship, to understand the balance of the cosmos. He took Isis as his queen, and together they guided humanity with wisdom and grace, their reign bringing peace and prosperity. But even in the age of gods, jealousy took root. Set watched from the shadows as his brother was praised, as mortals and deities alike revered Osiris. Though he too was mighty, though he too was of divine blood, the world had not been given to him. It was Osiris who was beloved, Osiris who was chosen, Osiris who stood as the shining symbol of order. And in Set's heart, a storm began to brew. He did not speak of his resentment, did not yet act upon the whispers that festered in his thoughts, but the seeds of discord had been sown, and when the storm finally broke, it would shake the heavens themselves. For now, Egypt flourished under Osiris's gentle rule. The Nile ran full, the fields bore golden harvests, and the people thrived beneath the watchful eyes of their gods. Isis walked among them, teaching the women the secrets of healing, the knowledge of herbs, the sacred words that could bind the unseen forces of the world. The temple stood tall, filled with the scent of offerings, prayers lifted to the sky in gratitude. It was a time of harmony, of divine favor, of a kingdom untouched by war. But harmony does not last forever. Beyond the fertile lands, where the river's song faded into silence, and the sun burned mercilessly upon shifting dunes, Set wandered. The desert was his domain, wild and untamed, its winds howling his fury, its storms mirroring his unrest. He had not been given rule over the world of men, nor was he praised as his brother was. He was the forgotten one, the force unacknowledged, and with each passing season, his heart became a furnace of resentment, his fury growing like a fire starved for air. He watched as Osiris sat upon the throne, as mortals bowed before him, as even the gods themselves favored him. It was an injustice Set could not bear. Nephthys, his wife by divine decree, saw the shadows growing within him. She understood his pain, but knew she could not reach him, not as Isis reached Osiris, not as a queen reaches her king. She was the goddess of twilight, of the spaces between, and Set was a storm raging beyond her grasp. And so, she watched in silence as her husband's thoughts darkened, as his gaze turned toward something inevitable. The day of reckoning would come, for Set could not remain in the shadows forever. He could not endure the weight of his own fury without action. And so, he devised a plan, not one of open war, not one of reckless battle, but one of cunning, of deception, of betrayal so deep that the gods themselves would tremble. The day of reckoning arrived beneath the golden glow of the setting sun, a day that Osiris welcomed with an open heart, unaware of the betrayal that lurked in the shadows. Set, ever watchful, had woven his deception with patience, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He did not come wielding a sword, nor did he declare his intentions with the roar of a storm. No, he came with a gift, an act of brotherly love, veiled in grandeur. Set hosted a great feast, a celebration of Osiris's reign, inviting all the gods to partake in merriment, in song and laughter, in wine and revelry. And among the many wonders displayed that night was a magnificent chest, crafted from the finest wood, inlaid with gold and precious stones, its beauty unmatched, its craftsmanship divine. The gods marveled at it, their fingers tracing its flawless carvings, its perfect symmetry. And then, with a voice smooth as the desert breeze, Set spoke. "This chest is unlike any other," he declared, his words coated in honeyed deceit. "It is fit only for one who matches it in form, in stature, in greatness. Whosoever lies within it perfectly shall claim it as their own." The gods, intrigued, took turns reclining within, yet none fit its dimensions. Too large, too small, never quite right. And then, with his ever-trusting heart, Osiris stepped forward, his laughter warm, his spirit unguarded. He lay within the chest, stretching against its edges, his form fitting as if it had been made for him alone. And in that instant, the trap was sprung. The moment Osiris's back touched the wood, the lid slammed shut. A terrible silence fell upon the feast. Before the gods could react, Set's followers rushed forward, sealing the chest with unbreakable chains, pouring molten lead over its edges, locking Osiris away from the world. The air grew heavy, thick with the weight of something irrevocable, something lost. Osiris, the beloved king, the giver of life, was imprisoned. His voice, his power, his very presence vanishing into the silence of the wood. Set stood over the sealed coffin, his breath steady, his heart unyielding. "The throne is mine," he declared, his voice unshaken by guilt, his claim absolute. And then, with a final heave, he and his followers lifted the chest and carried it to the Nile. The river, which had once flowed full beneath Osiris's gentle hand, now bore the weight of his prison. The waters lapped at the shore, unaware of the crime that had been committed, and with a final push, they cast it into the depths, watching as the currents swallowed it whole. The gods looked on in horror, yet none dared to challenge Set in that moment. His power surged, unchallenged and unopposed. With Osiris gone, there was no ruler to defy him. He ascended the throne, seizing Egypt as his own. But he did not rule with wisdom, he ruled with iron will, with the force of storms, with the wrath of a god unbound. The land that had once thrived under Osiris's hand now trembled beneath the weight of Set's reign. But the tale was not yet over, for as the Nile carried Osiris's prison far beyond the reach of his enemies, Isis was already moving. Grief-stricken, but unbroken, she vowed to find her husband, to bring him back from the abyss. She alone would defy Set. She alone would challenge fate. And so, the goddess of magic, draped in robes the color of the deep sky, stepped into the unknown, her heart set on a single purpose: to find Osiris. She searched the banks of the river, calling his name into the wind, seeking signs in the shifting sands. She traveled beyond the lands of Egypt, beyond the borders of the known world, guided only by the whispers of fate, by the echoes of her husband's soul carried in the breath of the gods. Through desert and valley, through mountain and sea, she wandered tirelessly until at last her search led her to a distant shore where the Nile had surrendered its burden. The chest had come to rest among the roots of a great tree, hidden within its massive trunk, the wood growing around it as if the earth itself had tried to protect the fallen god. In this faraway land, a great king had seen the beauty of the tree and ordered it to be cut down, its trunk fashioned into a pillar within his palace. Isis arrived in silence, veiling her divine presence, her radiance dimmed beneath the guise of a mere woman. The palace was grand, its halls filled with golden light, its columns stretching toward the heavens. She did not announce herself as a goddess. Instead, she entered as a servant, offering her aid to the royal household. The queen, touched by the gentle presence of the stranger, accepted her into their home, entrusting her with the care of their child. But Isis was not merely tending to Prince. She was waiting. She spent her nights wandering the halls, running her hands along the pillar that held her beloved, whispering ancient prayers into the air, calling forth the magic that lay dormant within the wood. And when the time was right, she revealed herself, casting aside her disguise, standing before the royal court in all her celestial glory. The queen and king, struck by the divine radiance before them, listened as she spoke. "This pillar holds what is mine," she said, her voice steady, filled with the power of the heavens. "I ask for what belongs to me." And so, with reverence and fear, they allowed her to take the pillar. She broke it open with trembling hands, revealing the sacred chest within. Osiris, still bound, still lost within the dark embrace of death, lay inside. Her heart clenched at the sight of him, but she was not defeated. This was only the beginning. Under the cover of night, Isis carried the sacred chest back to Egypt, her hands trembling not with fear, but with the weight of destiny. She moved through the marshes, guided by whispers of the wind and the silent watch of the stars, until she reached the hidden depths of the reeds, where the waters murmured secrets to the sky. There, in the heart of the land where only the gods dared tread, she placed the chest upon the earth and knelt beside it. She ran her fingers along its surface, feeling the warmth of what once was, the echoes of a heartbeat long stilled. Osiris lay within, yet his body remained untouched by time, preserved by the very power that had once ruled the land. He was not lost, merely waiting, but Set's shadow was long, and his wrath was swift. The whispers of Osiris's return reached his ears, carried by the winds, murmured by the reeds that bent beneath the moonlight. He would not allow his brother to rise again. He scoured the land with unrelenting fury, searching for the body he had cast away, unwilling to let even death undo what he had done. And when he found it, hidden among the reeds, his rage consumed him. With monstrous strength, Set tore open the chest, his breath heavy with hatred. He did not stop at mere desecration. He seized Osiris's body in his hands, and with a force only a god of storms could wield, he tore it apart, limb from limb, scattering the pieces across the land. Into the river, into the mountains, into the heart of Egypt itself, he cast them, ensuring that his brother would never be whole again. The gods gasped in horror, but Set only stood taller, believing his victory complete. There was no body left to resurrect, no king left to reclaim the throne. The world was his, unchallenged, eternal, but he had underestimated Isis. Grief did not break her. It made her unstoppable. She would not surrender. She would not yield. If Osiris had been scattered across the world, then she would gather him piece by piece, no matter how long it took. With Nephthys at her side, she began the impossible task. She combed the deserts, walked the riverbanks, whispered to the birds and the beasts, calling upon every force of nature to aid her. The earth itself seemed to mourn with her, revealing its hidden secrets, guiding her to the fragments of her beloved. One by one, she found them. His hands, strong and steady, buried beneath the sand. His heart, the core of his being, resting in the embrace of a sacred grove. His feet, his arms, his chest, each piece returned to her, carried back to the sacred temple where she prepared the greatest magic ever woven. Yet one piece remained lost, the most vital of all. His essence, his power, had been swallowed by the depths of the Nile, consumed by the waters that had once carried him away. But Isis was undeterred. She was a goddess of magic, a weaver of spells, a force beyond the limits of gods and men alike. With her power, with her boundless will, she fashioned what had been taken, restoring him once more, completing him in the only way she could. And then, with the strength of her divine essence, she breathed life into him. Osiris's eyes opened. His soul stirred within the body that had been remade, and for the first time since his fall, he rose. Yet he was not as he once was. He had touched death, walked the paths beyond the veil, and the underworld clung to him like a shadow that could not be cast away. He could not remain in the world of the living. His throne was lost, his kingdom beyond his grasp. But another fate awaited him. He would rule, but not as king of men. He would reign over the realm of the dead, presiding over the souls who passed beyond the threshold of mortality. He would become the judge of the underworld, the keeper of balance, the guardian of eternity itself. Yet before he departed, there was one final act of love. In the embrace of his wife, in the magic that bound them together, a child was conceived. A son formed from the union of life and death, of sorrow and hope. He would be the avenger, the heir to a stolen throne, the falcon who would one day rise to claim his destiny. His name would be Horus. Osiris turned to Isis, his gaze filled with sorrow, yet with something more, something eternal. He will be the one to restore what was lost, he said. He will challenge Set. He will bring balance. And then, with the whispers of the gods as his guide, Osiris descended into the underworld, stepping beyond the realm of the living, leaving behind a world that had not yet seen the end of its struggle. The throne remained in Set's grasp, his rule unchallenged. But Isis knew the truth. The war was not yet over. She cradled her unborn child beneath the stars, feeling the weight of destiny stir within her. She had lost Osiris to the underworld, but she had not lost hope. The seed of vengeance, of justice, had been sown, and it would grow into the warrior who would one day reclaim all that had been taken. The night stretched endless and silent, cloaking the land in the hush of unseen fate. Beneath the reeds of the Nile, in the hidden places where even the gods dared not tread, Isis prepared for the future. She was no longer merely a queen mourning her fallen king. She was a mother, bearing the child who would one day stand against Set. But she knew that the moment her son was born, he would be in danger. If Set learned of his existence, he would strike without hesitation, crushing the last hope of Osiris before it could take its first breath. And so, Isis fled into hiding, vanishing into the depths of the marshes, where the waters wove a labyrinth that no enemy could easily penetrate. Days passed in silence, nights in whispered prayers. Nephthys stood watch over her, ever loyal, ever grieving. The gods who had not sided with Set turned their eyes toward Isis, their silent hopes resting upon the child she carried. This was no ordinary birth. This was prophecy manifest, a god born not into peace, but into war. When the time came, Horus was born beneath the watchful gaze of the moon, his first cries swallowed by the wind. He was a child of destiny, his fate written in the stars before he even opened his eyes. His mother, knowing that danger lurked beyond the sanctuary of the marshes, shielded him with every ounce of her magic, weaving spells of concealment around their refuge. Yet Set's shadow loomed ever near. He sensed a shift in the world, a ripple in the order he had forced into place. He scoured the land, searching, his wrath an ever-growing storm. But he could not find what he sought. The child remained hidden from him, just beyond his reach. Time passed, and Horus grew strong in the seclusion of the marshes. But he was not raised as an ordinary child. From the moment he could walk, Isis whispered to him the wisdom of the gods, the history of his father's throne, the duty that awaited him. She spoke of Osiris, of the kingdom that had been stolen from him, of the uncle who had seized it by force. She told him of balance, of honor, of the war he was born to fight. But wisdom alone would not be enough to defeat Set. Horus had to become more than a child. He had to become a warrior. And so, Isis sought out the gods who had once stood beside Osiris, calling upon them to grant her son the strength he would need. From Thoth, the keeper of wisdom, Horus learned strategy, the art of war not only fought with weapons, but with the mind, sharper than any blade. From the great falcons that soared above the land, he inherited the vision of kings, the eyes that could see through deceit, through shadow, through the lies of men and gods alike. From the river, he learned patience. From the storm, power. Horus was no ordinary child, and by the time he reached manhood, he had become something greater than the sum of his teachings. He was the falcon, the god of the sky, the avenger of his father. He was ready, yet Set still ruled. His grip on the land had not weakened, and the whispers of rebellion remained mere murmurs, unheard beneath the weight of his might. None dared challenge him openly, for his fury was swift, his vengeance absolute. He ruled not with wisdom, but with fear, his storms sweeping across the desert, his laughter echoing through the halls of the gods. He believed himself victorious, unchallenged, but he had not counted on time. Time belonged to Horus, and so, as the sun cast its golden light upon the Nile, Horus stood before his mother, no longer a boy, but a warrior, his gaze sharp as the edge of a blade. "The time has come," he said. "I will face him." Isis, her heart filled with both pride and fear, placed her hand upon his brow. "You are your father's son," she whispered. "Go, my child. But know this, power alone will not win this battle. You must be cunning, for Set is strong, and he does not fight with honor." Horus nodded. He had been forged in loss, in duty, in the knowledge that he was the last hope of a stolen kingdom. He would not rest until the throne was reclaimed, until Set was cast down, until the balance of the gods was restored. And so, he left the safety of the marshes, stepping into the open world for the first time, his shadow long against the sands. The gods watched in silence as he walked toward his destiny, toward the battle that had been written in the stars since the day of his birth. The war for Egypt had begun. The desert winds howled as Horus stepped beyond the shelter of the marshes, the weight of destiny pressing upon his shoulders. He was no longer a hidden child, no longer a whisper in the reeds. He was the rightful heir, the avenger of his father, the warrior destined to reclaim the throne. His arrival did not go unnoticed. Word spread like wildfire through the land, carried by the voices of gods and mortals alike. The son of Osiris had come. The long-awaited reckoning was upon them. The gods turned their eyes toward the coming storm, watching as the long-buried struggle for Egypt's throne began to unfold. Some, weary of Set's reign, murmured their allegiance to Horus, seeing in him the promise of a kingdom restored. Others, fearful of Set's wrath, remained silent, unwilling to risk the vengeance of the god who had ruled with an iron fist. But Horus did not come seeking war for vengeance alone. He sought justice. He sought to reclaim what had been stolen. He sought to restore balance to a world that had fallen into disorder beneath Set's reign. And so, he did not raise his spear in reckless fury. He raised his voice in challenge. Before the gathered gods, before the divine tribunal, he stood tall and unshaken, "The throne of Egypt belongs to me," he proclaimed, his voice steady, unwavering. "It was stolen by deceit, taken by force. I am Horus, son of Osiris, and I demand that justice be served." Set, seated upon the throne he had claimed as his own, merely laughed. His crimson eyes gleamed like embers, his sharp teeth bared in amusement. He did not see a threat before him. He saw a boy, a child who had spent his life hiding in the reeds while he had ruled with strength. "You demand justice," Set's voice dripped with mockery. "You were but a mewling babe when I took this throne. You know nothing of power, nothing of the war that shaped this kingdom. I am the ruler of Egypt. You are nothing but a whisper of a past that has already faded." Horus did not flinch. "Then face me," he said. "If you are truly the rightful king, you will have no fear in proving it." Set's laughter died. His amusement flickered into something else, something darker, something more dangerous. He had expected the boy to cower, to falter, to beg. But this was no timid heir. This was a warrior, standing before him with the fire of Osiris burning in his veins. The gods watched in silence as Set rose from his throne, the desert winds carrying the weight of his presence. The air thickened, charged with the storm yet to come. "Very well," Set said. "Let the trial begin." And so, the gods gathered to bear witness as the contest between Set and Horus was set into motion. It would not be a single battle, not a mere clash of swords and strength. No, this was a war of endurance, a series of trials that would test not only their might, but their cunning, their resilience, their divine right to rule. The first contest was one of might. They clashed upon the battlefield, their forms towering over the earth, their blows shaking the heavens. Horus, swift as the falcon, struck with precision, while Set, strong as the storm, countered with sheer force. Their battle raged for days, neither yielding, neither faltering. The land bore the scars of their war, mountains split, rivers trembled, the very sky darkened beneath the weight of their struggle. But Set, unwilling to accept the possibility of defeat, turned to deception. In the dead of night, he took the form of a great black beast and crept into Horus's camp, seeking to strike while his nephew slept. Yet Isis, ever watchful, sensed the danger. With a whisper of magic, she cast forth a spell, revealing Set's treachery, forcing him to retreat into the shadows. Enraged, Set devised another trial. This time, they would race across the waters of the Nile in boats made of stone. It was a contest of skill, of divine power, of mastery over the elements themselves. Horus, wise beyond his years, crafted his vessel not of stone, but of wood, painted to appear as rock. Set, blind in his arrogance, did not see the deception until it was too late. His heavy boat sank beneath the waves, while Horus glided across the river with ease. Fury boiled within Set. He would not be outmatched, not by the son of the brother he had cast down. And so, in his rage, he abandoned all pretense of fairness. He turned upon Horus with unrelenting wrath, unleashing a storm so fierce that that the very gods trembled. Lightning split the sky, the winds howled with his fury, and he struck Horus down, wounding him gravely. For a moment, it seemed as though Set had won. Horus lay motionless, his divine blood staining the sands, the echoes of battle fading into silence. But Isis would not allow her son to fall. With hands steady despite her sorrow, she gathered him in her arms, whispering words of power, calling upon the forces that bound life and death. She healed his wounds, mending flesh and spirit alike, breathing strength back into the god who was not yet done. Horus rose once more. The trials had not ended. The war was not yet won. Set's reign was crumbling, and he knew it. But he would not surrender. He would fight until the very end, until either he or Horus was cast down for eternity. And so, the final battle loomed on the horizon, a storm waiting to break. The heavens trembled as Horus and Set prepared for their final confrontation. The gods, seated in their celestial court, watched in solemn silence, their eyes flickering between the two deities locked in this endless struggle. Their battle had raged across the land through river and desert, through deception and trial, yet no victor had emerged. But now, the time for contests had passed. This would be the moment that decided the fate of Egypt. Horus stood tall, his body marked by the scars of his trials, his golden skin streaked with the dust of war. His eyes, keen as the falcon whose form he often took, were locked upon his enemy. He had endured treachery. He had suffered wounds, both seen and unseen, but his resolve had only sharpened. This was not just vengeance for his father. This was justice for the balance of the world. Set loomed before him, his broad form rigid with fury, his crimson gaze burning with defiance, his muscles coiled with unyielding strength. He had fought too long, ruled too fiercely, to let a mere boy take what he had claimed. The throne was his. He had seized it with his own hands, carved his kingdom from chaos and force. He would not surrender. The battle began with the force of an earthquake. They clashed like the collision of stars, their blows shaking the sky, their roars splitting the air like thunder. Horus, swift as the falcon, darted through the battlefield, striking with precision, his spear flashing in the light of Ra's sun. Set, powerful as the storm, countered with brute force, each of his strikes splitting the earth beneath them. The desert bore witness to their wrath. Mountains crumbled. The Nile churned, its waters rising in great waves. Lightning crackled through the heavens, the sky caught in the fury of their war. Horus took the form of a great falcon, his wings dark against the sun, diving at Set with the speed of the wind. Set, in turn, transformed into a monstrous beast, his shape twisting and shifting, his form swelling with the power of the storm. They fought as gods, beyond the limits of mortals, their battle spanning sky and earth alike. Then, in a single brutal strike, Set seized Horus, gripping him with hands as strong as the mountains. With savage force, he tore out Horus's left eye, casting it into the darkness, where it was swallowed by the night. The pain was searing, an agony that echoed through the cosmos. Yet Horus did not cry out. He staggered, blood streaming down his face, his vision blurred, but he did not fall. Pain would not break him. Loss would not stop him. He had learned this lesson from his mother, from his father, from the gods who had shaped him in the shadows. And though Set believed himself victorious in that moment, the gods knew otherwise. For Horus's eye was not merely an organ of sight. It was a symbol of power, of clarity, of wisdom. And when it was lost, it was not destroyed. Thoth, the god of wisdom, descended from the heavens, his presence calm amid the chaos of war. He knelt beside Horus, touching the wound with hands that had written the laws of the universe itself. He whispered words of healing, of knowledge. And in place of the eye that had been taken, he bestowed a new one, a divine eye, forged from the light of the moon and the wisdom of the gods. The eye of Horus, restored and empowered. Horus turned once more to his uncle. But this time, something had changed. He no longer fought in anger. He no longer fought for revenge alone. He fought for the world itself, for the balance that Set had broken. Set saw the change. He saw the unshakable will in his nephew's gaze. And for the first time, he knew fear. The battle raged on, but Set's strikes grew desperate, his power faltering. He had fought for so long, clung to his stolen throne with all his might. But the gods were watching. The time of judgment had come. With a final, mighty strike, Horus brought Set to his knees. The gods, who had remained silent observers until now, rose from their thrones. Ra himself, the great sun god, looked upon Set, his judgment heavy as the weight of time itself. "It is over," Ra declared, his voice like the breaking of the dawn. Set, breathing hard, his body battered, stared at the gathered gods. He saw no ally among them, no voice that would defend him. The truth had become undeniable. His rule had ended, but he was not cast into oblivion. The gods, in their wisdom, knew that even chaos had its place in the order of the cosmos. And so, rather than destroy Set, they sentenced him to a new role. He would no longer rule the throne of Egypt. Instead, he would be bound to the task of defending Ra's solar barge each night as the sun descended into the underworld. There, Set would battle the great serpent Apep, the eternal enemy of light, ensuring that the sun would rise again. He would become the guardian of the celestial cycle, forever fighting the darkness he had once embraced. It was not the fate he had sought, but it was a fate he could not refuse. And so, with the war ended, the gods turned to Horus. He had proven himself. He had fought with honor, with wisdom, with the strength of a true ruler. He had avenged his father, claimed his birthright, and restored balance to the world. And so, before the gathered gods, Horus was crowned the rightful king of Egypt. The land, which had suffered beneath the rule of Set, flourished once more. The Nile ran full. The fields grew golden. The people rejoiced, for their true king had come at last. Yet even in his victory, Horus did not forget. He stood beneath the stars, his father's presence felt in the gentle night breeze, in the whisper of the waters. Osiris ruled now in the underworld, but his legacy lived on in the world above, in the son who had fought for him, in the kingdom that had been reclaimed. The war had ended, but the story of the gods was far from over. The land of Egypt, once divided by war and shadow, now stood whole under the rule of Horus. The people, long weary of Set's reign, rejoiced as the rightful king ascended his throne. The temples brimmed with offerings, prayers lifted to the heavens in gratitude for the return of balance. The Nile, once turbulent with the echoes of battle, flowed peacefully once more, its waters carrying the promise of renewal. Yet even in victory, the scars of war remained. Horus, though crowned, bore the weight of his journey upon his shoulders. He had fought not just for himself, not just for vengeance, but for the restoration of order itself. And now, as he sat upon the throne his father once held, he understood the burden of rulership. The throne was not merely a seat of power, it was a responsibility, one that stretched beyond the realm of the living. For though Set had been cast down, though the gods had delivered their judgment, there were still forces in the world that sought to unravel what had been restored. The echoes of chaos never truly faded. The balance Horus had fought to reclaim would require vigilance, wisdom, and the guidance of those who had come before. It was in the stillness of the night, beneath the watchful stars, that Horus turned his thoughts to the underworld, to Osiris. His father, though gone from the land of the living, had not vanished. He reigned now in Juat, the realm of the dead, presiding over the souls who passed beyond the veil of mortality. He sat in judgment, weighing the hearts of men against the feather of mad, ensuring that the cycle of life and death remained unbroken. And so, guided by duty and longing, Horus sought communion with the one who had given him his purpose. In the sacred temple, beneath the golden light of flickering torches, Horus prepared himself for the journey. He called upon Thoth, the keeper of wisdom, to guide his path. He invoked Anubis, the guardian of the dead, to grant him safe passage. And with the sacred rites completed, he closed his eyes and let his spirit descend into the depths of Juat. The underworld was vast, a place where the sun traveled in the hours of night, where the dead awaited judgment, where Osiris reigned in solemn majesty. Horus walked the winding paths of this shadowed realm, past rivers of fire and endless fields of reeds, past spirits whispering the tales of their lives, past celestial gates guarded by beings of ancient power. At last, he reached the Hall of Mad. There, upon his great throne, sat Osiris, king of the underworld, god of the afterlife. His form was wrapped in the sacred linen of resurrection, his crown tall upon his brow, his scepter resting in his hands. His presence was both familiar and otherworldly, his gaze filled with the wisdom of eternity. For a moment, father and son simply looked upon one another. Then Osiris spoke. "You have done well, my son." Horus knelt before him, not as a warrior, not as a king, but as a son who had fought for the father he had lost. "I have reclaimed the throne," he said, his voice steady. "I have restored order." Osiris inclined his head. "And yet, you know that order must always be defended." Horus nodded. He had learned this truth through battle, through suffering, through the trials that had forged him into the ruler he had become. "Chaos will always seek to return," Osiris continued, "and it is the duty of kings to stand against it." Silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of all that had passed and all that was yet to come. Then Osiris's gaze softened. "You have honored me," he said. "You have honored your mother, your people, the gods themselves. You are king now, Horus, and you are ready." Horus met his father's eyes, the last traces of uncertainty fading from his heart. He had fought the battle, but now he understood the war. It was not merely about reclaiming what had been lost. It was about ensuring that balance endured. As he rose, Osiris extended a hand, and for a fleeting moment, their fingers touched, mortal and immortal, father and son, past and future entwined. Then the vision faded. Horus opened his eyes to the temple, the scent of incense heavy in the air, the golden flames flickering in the dim light. But though his surroundings had changed, the weight upon his shoulders had not. He was king, and his reign had only just begun. The reign of Horus, ushered in an age of order, wisdom, and divine justice. The land of Egypt flourished under his watchful eye, the rivers flowing strong, the fields brimming with life, the people walking with renewed purpose, their faith in the gods restored. The temples filled with offerings, the songs of devotion rising into the heavens like the flight of the falcon itself. Yet though peace had been won, Horus knew that true kingship was not merely about ruling in times of prosperity. It was about ensuring that balance endured, even when shadows threatened to return. And so, he remained ever vigilant, his eyes scanning the horizon for the signs of unrest, for the whispers of chaos that always lurked beneath the surface of the world. The gods, too, watched their new king with silent approval. Ra, the great sun god, observed him with pride, knowing that balance had been restored through his trials. Thoth, the keeper of wisdom, stood by him, offering guidance in the ways of governance, ensuring that the rule of law was upheld in the mortal realm as it was in the heavens. Anubis, guardian of the underworld, continued his sacred duty, preserving the passage of souls so that Osiris's kingdom remained undisturbed. But not all gods were at peace. Though Set had been defeated, though he had been sentenced to his eternal task of defending Ra's solar barge from Apep, his presence had not vanished from the world. He remained a shadow lingering on the edges of existence, a reminder that chaos could never be truly destroyed, only contained. And there were those who still whispered his name in the farthest reaches of the desert, beyond the borders of Horus's rule. There were mortals who had thrived under Set's dominion, who had found strength in his storms and lawlessness. These followers did not see Set as a defeated god. but as one who had been wronged, cast down by the will of the others. And though they had been silent in the wake of his fall, they had not forgotten. Horace knew of these murmurs. He had heard the rumors of secret gatherings in the wilderness, of those who called upon the power of the storm, seeking its return. He knew that though he had won the battle, the struggle for balance would never truly end, and so he prepared. He strengthened the temples, ensuring that the priests who spoke the words of Mad, the goddess of truth and order, were heard across the land. He trained warriors not for conquest, but for the defense of the peace that had been so hard won. He traveled the lands himself, speaking to his people, reminding them of the balance that must be maintained. He would not rule from a distant throne. He would walk among those who looked to him for guidance. But even as he ruled, as he built a kingdom that honored both the gods and the people, Horace could not forget the past. There were nights when he stood upon the temple's highest steps, gazing into the darkness beyond the river's edge, remembering the father he had never truly known. Osiris was gone from the land of the living, reigning instead in Juat. And though Horace had seen him, spoken with him in the depths of the underworld, the absence still weighed upon him. Yet he understood now what his father had meant when he spoke of duty. Osiris had ruled not for himself, but for the balance of all things. He had sacrificed his place in the living world so that the cycle could continue, so that the realms of the living and the dead remained in harmony. And now, Horace bore that same responsibility. He was no longer just a son, avenging his father. He was a king, tasked with protecting all that had been entrusted to him. And as long as he reigned, balance would endure.